I'm Alan Ross with EPRA, the Electric Power Reliability Alliance. And our guest on this profile is Maria Lamorey. I keep messing that name up, Maria, but I get the first part right. One of the things I've liked about getting to know Maria is she is a problem solver. We're going to talk about a problem that is really, really bigger in the industry than most people realize. And I've seen the problem before, but I thought the solution was way too complicated. And PPG has come up with a very unique solution to that. So talk a little bit, Maria, about your history. I know you've also got an MBA. You're on the IEEE Transformer Committee. You've written a whole number of articles. We'll talk about those. But talk a little bit about your background and why PPG and why now?
Yes, I've been in manufacturing roughly 20 years, worked for a variety of companies. Just before PPG, I spent almost a decade in the electrical equipment industry. And what attracted me to PPG the most was that they were a long time servicing the electrical market in coatings, and we're looking to expand and grow more within that market, and really wanted someone that had the knowledge of the regulations and the knowledge of the equipment and the equipment design itself to really work to build the right product platform and continue to penetrate that market. So I've been here 6 years and excited about being here.
Well, I can tell you the future's got to be so bright that you have to wear shades, which is a joke I tell all the time. Because here's why: corrosion in the electrical asset market is a bigger problem than most people realize. And the solution that I've seen that people try to do is they try to wall it off, put it in a room, put air conditioning in the room, keep corrosion out. But the PPG methodology is to keep it out a different way. We're going to talk about that. But some of the values that we look at EPRA are things like innovation, continuous improvement, those kinds of things. Talk a little bit about the values of what you're trying to do and why PPG allows you to work in that, particularly the one called innovation.
Yes, absolutely. And one of my big passions, especially as I consider the electrical industry and the equipment involved, is so often we turn on switches and plug in devices and take that for granted. We forget and don't think about all those products out there in the field that have to live a long life in a harsh environment that allow us to be able to do that. Coupled with working directly with those manufacturers for so many years, they have so many things that they have to get concerned with as far as controls and connections and things like that. But when it comes to the coating, it can become the afterthought, the last thing that we think about. And so one of my visions and PPG's visions is to really innovate products and provide solutions that are easy for our customers to use to solve those corrosion issues, to allow those products to live a long life outdoors in harsh environments.
That's excellent. So you said something that you just described the alignment between a personal career vision and a company that allows you to live that out with inside their commercial market. And when we find it, it's actually life-giving. I mean, it energizes us. We get up in the morning and we like what we do. I know you like what you do because we've talked a lot about it. So we're kind of getting into that. You've kind of touched on the point of the problem in the marketplace. Explain a little bit of where you see the problem the most. Talk about that.
Sure. We actually see the problems on two kinds of products, and they go almost hand in hand in many ways, as a transformer and the switchgear. And where we see a lot of issues is in edge corrosion. And the edge, the sharp edges of those designs are really the Achilles heel or the weak spot in an equipment design. And what happens is back in the metal fabrication in the substrate stage, there's sharp edges that are created in that fabrication stage. And when you go to coat the parts, whether you're using powder or liquid or electrocoat, it may visually appear to have the paint that's covered the entire surface and onto the edge. But what happens when it goes into the curing process, it almost liquefies a bit and pulls away from the edge. So, and it exposes it. And many times it can even be at a microscopic level, and it's not visible until 5, 10 years when a piece of equipment's out in the field, and that's where the beginning of corrosion can start to occur. And one of the most common places, it's been a problem for years in many industries, and specifically in the electrical industry.
Okay, so as you look at that, we have a saying where I actually invented this, and now when I hear somebody else use it, I'll go, I invented that, but it's not something I invented. It is a movement within the reliability world, not the electrical system, but the reliability world, that I have kind of couched the phrase in the electrical reliability, and it is reliability engineering by design. What you just described is that at the design, when products are designed, and then somebody says, oh, you're gonna coat this in some way, that's where PPG can come in at the design phase and eliminate problems long after manufacture, long after they're then commissioned and put in service. And so all issues, and this is true, all failure issues. Now, there are aging issues where you age out a piece of equipment, but a failure issue, we believe, is reliability engineering by design. And so doing what you're talking about doing is eliminating that potential failure by design. But talk to me about what the solution would be then. When you say, they come up with it, they manufacture it, there are edges and it could be microscopic. What do you think PPG is saying to that manufacturer or that designer? How do you avoid that then?
Well, we try to avoid it by helping with through the coating technology versus trying to have that equipment manufacturer change their entire design, which could be very costly, and many times they're designed specifically to fit in certain spaces and things like that. So that's almost an impossible suggestion. Sometimes we do get involved with that. We can make some suggestion if there's a way to design a certain shape out or something like that that will help if we're early on in that process. But if it's a product that's been out there for a long time, we work to overcome it through coating innovations. And one of the innovations we've come up with is an extreme edge powder coating. We also have it in our electric coatings as well, that actually is specially designed to reach and cover and wrap around the edge of those products. And they're available in a 2-type of layer system where there's a primer and a top coat. They can also be used direct to metal as well as a single coat.
Okay. Is there any solution for after? Because when I say by design, I think that's part of the design. Coating is just another aspect of the design, and making sure it's specced at the front, because most people who are speccing it are not speccing, they're just speccing powder coat, right? They don't really think about what you're talking about. So that's an education at the market. And it is the least costly way for people to prevent problems in the long run. I think PPG would agree to that. Whatever it costs to do it right in the design phase, in the manufacturing phase. So let's go to the other side. It's been made. Most of these assets are out there. They've been out there 50 years, 30 years, 20 years, 15 years, especially switchgear. There's been a lot of change in switchgear, not a lot of change in transformers. Is there any way to solve that problem 10 years down the road, or are we just stuck? We have to wait until we remanufacture it.
Well, I mean, there's certainly can do some repairability out there, but it's better to catch that in the design phase and be more proactive and thoughtful in bringing that into the design part of the specification. So many times when those products are designed, the coating really is the afterthought of the afterthought versus bringing that decision really early on into the process. The other part to consider is performance testing. So many times we see the cut and paste of the UL requirement or the IEEE, which is great, but yeah, going beyond that and deciding what do you want your product to do out there and how long do you want it to live without having to go out there and repair it, and understanding what testing methods are best to use to incorporate into your specification. That's really about involving your coating supplier earlier into that process so they can advise you on the best testing methods that will predict your product's field performance and incorporating all of that into the matrix.
I go back to that end of it. When you deal with purchasing people, I typically say purchasing people always want the cheapest cost, right? But when
Yes.
you deal with true procurement professionals, they tend to deal with the higher or a level of specification that if somebody produces to that specification, it gives you the right cost value benefit. It might be a little bit higher cost, but TCO, total cost of ownership, is what procurement, if they're procurement people and they're good, should worry about, right? It seems to me that what you're talking about reduces the total cost of ownership, which is the life cycle cost, not just the manufacturing. So it would seem to me that you got to get into the spec world, that for those engineers in the utility industry or in industrial or commercial, when you're specing electrical components, you might ought to spec this up front. That would make your life a lot easier, wouldn't it?
Well, sure, and we work every day to provide education regarding that, through whether through technical conferences or white papers, anything like that. It really is truly my passion and PPG's passion to be able to partner with our customers and help educate them so that they can reduce problems down the line up front.
So total cost of ownership is the way to do it, because I've got to believe that the cost of doing it right up front is a lot less than the cost of trying to fix it after the problem. While you said there is some remediation afterwards, most of the time it's trying to eliminate it in the beginning. So I want to go back a little bit to another why question, because we've kind of done a why and we've done a what, we've done a how, and I'm going to ask you for a little bit on some case studies. You're not allowed to say any companies because nobody wants to talk about their problems, but where you've been able to solve problems. But I want to ask one more why. Why PPG coatings for this area? If I am out there and I'm specing the PPG solution, why should I spec it, other than the fact that we just told them all that it's the lower total cost of ownership? But give your sales pitch to one of our uh, procurement people, professionals.
Sure. Well, PPG is actually one of only a few companies that make all technologies. So we make pre-treatment, electrocoat, powder, and liquid, and a variety of UV coatings and what have you. So even if you only buy one of those products from PPG, but you're using the others, in particular pre-treatment, usually always pre-treatment goes with a top coat of some kind. In PPG world, we say we paint pre-treatment. We don't paint the metal necessarily. Because the pre-treatment's literally the most critical step, but we understand the process from the beginning to the end. So that we can really help to eliminate finger pointing if you're using multiple suppliers. Not only that, but we have the testing capabilities in-house to troubleshoot, and we also invest and innovate in each of those products so we can make recommendations at any point to improve processes, whether it's improving the actual coating line process or the product's longevity in the field, ease of application. I mean, we can just provide a variety of those things. We also have an incredible field-based technical service team that does not only in-house visits, they also have the ability to do video conferencing and remote conferencing to troubleshoot products. And those folks are trained in all of the technologies as well. So you really get the full encompassing.
So I know why you're the commercial manager of this division now. That was really good. That was excellent. Go into a little bit now again of the how. If I were to ask you, okay, you've got, we call it an elevator speech. You've got the time it goes from the 23rd floor down to the ground floor. And I asked you this one question: what is the best example of a PPG solution for the problem that you can give me? What industry? Because it's unusual. What you're doing in the electrical component industry is unusual. Not everybody thinks about what you're doing at PPG, but give me an example of your best case study.
Okay, absolutely. We actually were working with a manufacturer that was making transformers and network protectors. And
Okay.
they were having a huge problem with dissimilar metals and galvanic corrosion, where they were having stainless steel on their part coming into contact with a cold rolled steel. And their only solution was, at the time, they went through coatings after coatings, different suppliers, and their only solution at the time to satisfy their customer was to be able to go to all stainless steel, which was very cost prohibitive in their market, and competitively wise, it was not going to work in a long term. It's a very short term solution. And at PPG, we were able to, I'm in the industrial coatings group, but we have multiple divisions, including aerospace, automotive, and our protective marine coatings group. I was able to work with our technical team there to come up with a solution that would typically go into a marine heavy duty ship application and actually coat these network protectors and solve the problem. They were able to keep their design the way it was, the substrates they were using, and move away from the complete stainless offering and maintain their competitive advantage. It's one of the most exciting projects I worked on.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, because I owned a coatings company. We made the primer systems for Cessna years and years ago, water-based primer system for Cessna jets. So we understand substrate. I understand the substrate coating, and you don't. And we used to say that we would allow Sherwin-Williams to put very high VOCs on jets because we had zero VOC. Anyway, it was an interesting day and an interesting time. When you think about, so that's a controller, network controllers. I would think that switchgear, being the nature of what it is, very unique to the electrical services industry, that the product's got to have great application as it relates to switchgear. Have you got a case study that we can look at and say, that's specific to switchgear?
Yes, absolutely. We had actually a couple of different manufacturers we worked with where they were having warranty claims and field claims, and of course those get very expensive because it's not just the metal housing. It's when they get into a warranty claim, it's the entire unit, everything on the inside and what have you, and the full system's going to have to be replaced, not just the enclosure itself typically. And many of those products use powder coatings, and that edge corrosion is really where it comes into play, because some of those designs not only have sharp corners, but they also tend to have fins or louvers for cooling devices or any kind of odd symmetrical shapes. So we have designed, and it just came out last year, this extreme protection edge powder. We also call it high edge powder. And it's also got high transfer efficiency characteristics built into it. So what happens in the powder coating process is that almost all of it goes onto the part and wraps and protects it, versus in powder coating you can lose a lot in the reclaim and falling on the floor and things like that. So it really helps to coat and penetrate all those deep recessed areas, odd shapes, and really get a good secure coating on the enclosures themselves that protect that switchgear.
So you just illustrated the best point about total cost of ownership. And in this one, it was a warranty item. When it's out of warranty, who suffers that consequence is the owner, the person that bought that. Who should have spec'd it in the first place should be the owner, not just because of the company that makes it and has to handle the warranty things. Warranties are getting longer, but you know what you also hear? You better run it exactly the way we expect you to run it in order to keep the warranty. And so that happens in transformers. I've seen a recent one, 25-year warranty on a transformer. You never used to see that, 25 years. Well, that doesn't cost them anything. They last 50 years. So, you know, it's just a nature of what's happened there. But I go back to total cost of ownership. There's a gentleman who's become a fellow in our industry, Ramesh Gulati, and he is probably the brightest on reliability tied to total cost of ownership. He works with IAM on the ISO 55000 committee, talking about life cycle of assets. The idea that what you do at PPG extends the life of an asset, avoids unplanned outages, because failure comes because you didn't think of something in design, and actually implements reliability engineering design is what this has been all about. Anything else that I should know about you, PPG, or the problem and the solution?
Well, we're just excited about the electrical business and stay very active in it, and we look forward to working more with our manufacturers that support us and we support them.
So I have a couple of articles that I read that you wrote. I'm going to have to look down because I'm going to read them. But surviving the elements of corrosion resistance that you did in an issue back in whenever. Okay, I can't read print that small. And then corrosion eating away at electrical components. I know they have some significant. So part of what you're trying to do is educate the market. At EPRA, we will make any publications that you have on educating the market available in our body of knowledge. But we'll talk a little bit more about these in our Take 5 segment that we'll do later. But the idea for our members is to understand what EPRA is about, is trying to educate, inform, make you aware of, and inspire people to do things better and differently, because we believe it's not best practices that work, it's better practices. And Maria, it sounds like you and PPG are onto something, that you have a better practice for coatings to avoid problems in the long term. And I thank you for being our guest on this profile.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.